The very advent of time began the slave-master hierarchy between us and those unseen forces behind our every action and thought. They built and created rules and systems of thought, created kingdoms and spawned religions used to rule the masses from afar by controlling the ebb and flow of space and time on an epic level. Under the guise of free will and individualism, the systems in place around us actually ensures that we have no choice but to comply and obey an underlying agenda that, at its core, is evil. This is the story of how mankind has, for thousands of years, been subjugated, oppressed and controlled by beings from another realm. Archaeology and history reveal that the times before these beings arrived, humans lived a peaceful existence. We lived off the land, we ate berries and root crops, we followed the herds and were in tune with nature and its rhythms. The beings arrived, and a divided mankind fought back. An ancient civil war across the world between those who followed the invaders and those who wanted freedom. It was the beginning of a new way for humanity, a new method of imprisonment. And now, thousands of years later, we are still under the spell. The creation of civilizations everywhere comes hand in hand with the stories of the arrival of beings from another world. It is said that in ancient times we called aliens angels because we did not know what they were. Today it is said we call them aliens because we know better. There is in fact no difference between them. Aliens and angels are the same thing. There are also thousands of artifacts left behind by our ancestors. These depict the actual aliens themselves and their shape-shifting nature. From rock paintings that are tens of thousands of years old to carvings and statues of later civilizations. There are even numerous crafts seen around the world and left for us as works of art. Strange faces, strange craft, humanoids with elongated serpent-like eyes, spacesuits, spaceships, depictions of planets with rings that could not have been known, weapons. There are huge gaps in our history that simply cannot be explained in any other way. How suddenly an agrarian society discovers the knowledge to become a world-leading civilization with the ability to build massive superstructures that point to specific locations in the sky. And our modern historians are ignoring their ancestors' explanations that aliens came, took control, and took over our minds. The fact is this: ancient artifacts across the world reveal non-human intelligent creatures at the hands of machines and weapons and superior to the ordinary human beings below them. Align the texts with the artifacts and add into this the altered states humans experience, and we have but one conclusion. We were invaded, and we are right now, to this very day, being controlled by descendants of the invaders. There is absolutely no explanation why cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years all come up with the same cultural origins of extraterrestrial, superhuman beings that all look and act the same. What they told us was that there were good beings and bad beings, and one side waged against the other. However, our ancestors told us precisely what had happened. The Shining Ones came down. They set up the Watchers to control humans and foster civilization, but some of these Watchers didn't like what they were doing, and actually fell in love with humans and mated with them. The Shining Ones declared war on these Watchers and tried to wipe them out, the bad hybrid species. They caused a global flood. Ever since then, the angels have done battle with the demons, the bad with the good. And we have often witnessed these things, painted them, drawn them, and written down records.
In Africa today, there are the remains of the oldest form of worship anywhere on the planet. It is a cave in the shape of a huge serpent. All around there are pieces of stone fashioned into thousands of small scales. This is the place of worship for the serpent. This is where man first came into contact with the aliens. The discovery of this one location surprised the world. Nobody expected original worship to be that of the serpent, and yet it is within every single religion. It is in all the myths of the world, and they all tell the same story. In the beginning, the serpent was the wise one, the only animal in the Bible to speak freely with his own mind and voice. The tempter, and yet also the holder of ultimate wisdom and the elixir of life. From that day forward, the serpent would control man. The very genetic makeup of mankind altered from this moment. We cannot say exactly when. We cannot pinpoint the so-called Garden of Eden in time, but we can piece together the remarkable story of the moment the serpent aliens came from the skies. It is no surprise that such images of the snake in all its relative forms should be seen on the most ancient of rock art. Over thousands of years and across hundreds of cultures, the history of this ancient invasion by the great shining ones from the heavens altered and became legend and myth. But hidden in these stories is the real, literal truth of an invasion of planet Earth by beings so strange that we called them serpents. The great guardians of the Shining Ones, known as the Watchers, mated with human females and a hybrid bloodline was born. It became the bloodline of the rulers of our globe and was protected and kept secret. Then suddenly, at the very time we know as the Age of Taurus, at the very period that our remaining texts tell us the Shining Ones came and taught humanity, it all changed. Suddenly, civilization erupted. The Sumerians migrated to Mesopotamia, towards something that seemed to attract them. This is the period of tales of a great cataclysm, what we know as the Flood. Judgment from above. The gods were angry and dealt humanity a cruel blow. There is, in fact, a clue, a big clue, in the tales, and it reveals the origin of these serpent beliefs. The rattlesnake was, according to legend, once a man, alluding to the ancient incoming serpent race of antiquity. This man was transformed into a rattlesnake in order to bring salvation to the human race and save him. Yet again, it is the savior of mankind. This is not science fiction. This is the recorded history ignored by historians because it does not conform to their own belief systems.
These paintings, figures, and objects much like the modern imagery of aliens and flying saucers. In Utah's 9 Mile Canyon lies the heaviest concentration of rock art in the world. These depict beings that appear to be not quite completely human. They can be seen next to a disc-shaped object. Other beings of a more human form are raising their hands to these beings near the object. Near Christina Lake, British Columbia, Canada, there is a picture of a white disc with black wings hovering over 4 human figures on their knees. There are lines coming from the top of the disc, which could be rays of light. Longer, more irregular lines come down from the bottom of the object. A rock painting at Cayuse Creek, Idaho, depicts what appears to be a cone-shaped rocket with smoke or flames trailing behind it. In the cone is a humanoid figure, apparently holding on to the inner walls. A pictograph near Kootenay Lake in British Columbia also shows an enclosed vehicle holding a single humanoid figure. It depicts what appear to be sections of the vehicle and 2 objects closely resembling retractable legs for landing. Numerous depictions of egg-shaped objects with wavy lines emanating from them have been found. These could be an effort to show the object in motion or some sort of light or heat. If this were to depict the sun, lines would typically be found all around the circumference of the circle. In these cases, they came only from the bottom side. Ancient astronaut proponents also believe that travelers from outer space built many of the structures on Earth, such as the Egyptian pyramids and the Moai stone heads of Easter Island, or aided humans in building them. Humans considered the technology of the aliens to be supernatural, and the aliens themselves as gods.
Eric von Daniken has said in his Chariots of the Gods, these things were, in fact, forerunners of today's UFO phenomena. And what they were seeing then were the same type of or other dimensional beings that were coming. And just like when Columbus arrived on American shores, just like when Captain Cook arrived in Hawaii, they all revered them as gods because they came over the flat earth, you know, over the horizon in these huge canoes with sheets to catch the wind, strange-looking men with different kind of clothes, different colored skin, and they must be gods. But there are species that we look just like. The reason we look just like them is because I believe that that particular race, or a race like them, came to Earth how many millennia ago, and through genetic engineering, used their DNA, mixed their DNA with a simian creature, an earthbound being, and created our species. So yes, they are our creators. And you go back to the book of Genesis, Orthodox religion is going to say, God said he made us in his image. Well, no, it doesn't. It says, God said, let us make them in our image. Well, who's God talking to? So the apes and the monkeys that we see today, we're not part of this hybridization. We are. Biblical UFO hypothesis tries to examine the connection between those anomalous aerial phenomenon that was witnessed 2,000, 4,000 years ago by Ezekiel, a wheel within a wheel, Moses, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire, chariots of fire. The Romans used to call them flying shields.
The very book of Christians across the world, the Bible, is full of the serpent, and its inclusion is very interesting, for it reveals how the serpent was seen. The serpent worshippers of Moses' time and era were known as Hivites, derived from Hivia or serpent, the root of Eve. Hivites became Ophites, the early Christian Gnostic serpent worshippers who claimed affinity with the Christians in the 2nd century AD. Indeed, the very children of Israel intermarried with them and served their gods. In Islam, the snake is always seen as being closely associated with life. In fact, the word el-haya, meaning snake, is close to el-hayat, meaning the life-giving principle. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have spoken of the strange and powerful angelic beings known as jinn, from where we get genie, as being of three kinds, one of which was as a serpent. In Roman and Greek wall paintings, there are running spirals thought to be symbolic of the protective snake. Spirals and carvings of the serpent are seen all over the world, and it is always found to be in association with the serpent worship and strange and bizarre-looking alien-like creatures. There are hundreds more like it across the world, relating to the descent from serpent aliens.
If we actually take a look at the very first texts from all religions, we actually discover that our ancestors were talking about beings that came from another place, another dimension. They reveal that beings descended, often with craft. They then took control of humanity, formed the first civilizations, taught us how to grow crops, science, languages, and more. They placed superhuman watchers over us to keep us in our place. We, in return, worshipped them and turned them into our gods. They had incredible weapons of light, chariots that flew through the sky, and they lived for very long periods of time. Why is it that we modern, scientific, practical humans believe in a so-called loving and jealous God? Because that is what they wanted us to believe. But the truth is that these ancient aliens, beings of light that are in fact our prison guards, and we are under their yoke. Religion was created for us to follow the lies. And what does religion do? It makes special super beings. The legendary histories tell us quite clearly that these invaders mated with chosen humans and created a special breed. This new breed became our kings and queens, and were themselves worshipped as gods. From Egypt to Mesopotamia, from Europe to the Far East, all kings were gods on earth. The only real authority these alien hybrids had was the superior power over mankind. The ability to beat, control, and manipulate our minds into submission. The message here is quite simple. The Watchers are a spiritual or otherworldly being with power from the gods to control us. They should be worshipped by us. In modern terms, beings from an alternate reality, a different phase of reality, have put themselves above us, created religions for us to join and worship within, and formed highly secretive cabals to foster their control. This is why we humans are constantly manipulated to battle and hate each other. We are creating food for the demons of the other world, and we must stop. We must stop now playing the game they want us to play, and seek peace with each other regardless of the reasons. The reasons for our hatred are those created by the elite secret cabal in order to create hatred. Hatred of one religion or another is a prime example. There are no religions. They are created. They are imaginary. The differences between humans and their religions is a farce, and yet it has been used to foster huge hatred energy.
The exact same story we find in Sumeria, Egypt, the Bible, and numerous other cultures around the globe, a memory of an ancient invasion before recorded history. In a world where historians tell us these cultures never met, that they could not be related in any way, and yet the belief systems are the same. These were not angels or messengers of light. These were not great Greek deities sat on high and issuing commands. They were not the many-faced Hindu or Egyptian gods. These were beings from another planet who came here with superior technology.
Beings from another reality. Super weapons, superpowers, the ability to change shape, the serpentine reptilian appearance, the creation of civilization, the teaching of humanity, the erection of huge structures, the sudden knowledge of mankind, the forming of religions with deities and divine beings, and the forming of a line of special hybrid kings and queens. All of this is factual and worldwide.
I was in America over a period of about 15 days. I met 12 separate people, and I was going to a different place every day, who told me the same basic story, how they'd seen humans turn into a reptilian form and then back again. And it was such a common theme that they were describing that I started exploring from that time. So it came into my life very quickly. I was meeting someone, actually not very far from here, who had been married to a Satanist, who had been the warden for Burnham Beaches. And she told me when I met her about seeing Ted Heath, former Prime Minister of Britain, took us into the European Union, doing a satanic ritual at Burnham Beaches. She said what happened was she saw lights and she took the dog out that night, and then she went through and looked through the trees at this light, and she saw Heath in this circle. And she said what she then saw was Heath shift into a reptilian form and grow about 2 feet, which is absolutely common in descriptions of this all over the world. And she said he started speaking then in a voice a bit like, she described it as a bit like the old transatlantic telephone conversations when there was gaps. And she said the thing that shocked her more than anything else is that when this happened, no one in the circle moved in any way that related to shock or surprise. It seemed to them the most common thing you could imagine.
The fact is that humans have been abducted for thousands of years, ever since the arrival of the Reptilians. There are copious texts reporting these events, and some of the most famous are the actual characters from our religions: Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, Jesus. All of these and more all had close encounters with what we today would call aliens.
In 1961, Betty Hill, along with her husband Barney, were abducted from a roadside in New Hampshire. Betty described a medical procedure the aliens performed on her that oddly resembles a modern pregnancy test. She also described a star map that would not be known to our astronomers until 1969. The star map depicted the Zeta Reticuli star system accurately. The pregnancy test given to her by the aliens would not be developed by modern doctors until years later. The aliens also tested her nervous system and took skin samples. Could this have been an early encounter to determine if human DNA was compatible with their own? Or could this have simply been yet another alien race checking out the species in their local neighborhood? In any case, the Betty Hill abduction would not be the first or last. Throughout the 1970s till today, numerous alien abductions have been reported. A amazing abduction cases occurred in November of 1975 in Arizona. Travis Walton was abducted while working with a logging crew. The abduction was reported, and police searched for Travis for 5 days before he was returned. In the time Travis was missing, the other loggers were accused of murder and took polygraph tests to prove their story. When Walton was returned, he remembered very little about the 5 days he was gone. He described waking up on a table with several small gray aliens surrounding him. He was able to frighten the aliens away, then move down corridors in the ship where he found himself in something like a control room. Touching a button on a console caused the images in the room to change, and he thought it might be disastrous to touch anything else. Later, a tall, human-looking man with long blonde hair came and took him from the room to another room where he was sedated. When Walton was returned, he also took a polygraph test and passed. The local sheriff announced that he accepted the UFO story, saying, "There's no doubt they're telling the truth." Whitney Strieber, a popular author, asserts that he was abducted from his cabin in upstate New York on the evening of December 26th of 1985 by non-human beings. He wrote about this experience in Communion, his first nonfiction book. Although the book is perceived generally as an account of alien abduction, Strieber draws no conclusions about the identity of his alleged abductors. He refers to the beings as the visitors, a name chosen to be as neutral as possible to entertain the possibility that they are not extraterrestrials and may instead exist in his mind. Kirsan Nikolaevich Elizama, a multi-millionaire businessman, politician, and the president of the Republic of Kalmyka in the Russian Federation from 1993 to 2010, claims that in September of '97, he was taken from his flat by aliens and traveled in their spaceship, visiting another planet. He claims 3 of his staff searched his flat during this time, failing to find him, and could not explain how he then reappeared in his bedroom an hour later.
And our whole family were going to bed 11 o'clock, and I looked out the window of my bedroom, and I saw this green shimmering light in the sky, and billowing clouds, a small point in the sky, maybe 500, tops 1,000 feet in the air. So it was well within our atmosphere. And the smoke was billowing out and green shimmering lights behind it. I called to my mother, the sky is green. And she comes in and she looks, sure enough, the sky was green. And pretty soon my whole family, my parents, my sister, and myself were out on the front lawn. So it was summer because we were still in our pajamas and house coats. Father didn't know what it was. My mother said, "It's the second coming." Very religious woman, and she thought it was the second coming because none of us had any clue as to what it was. But it was a huge craft, perfectly silent, huge round lights of various colors, none of which were FAA standard. It was later. My sister just didn't pay any more attention after that. And under hypnosis, it was revealed that this little tornado of smoke that came down had a smaller craft in it. And small gray beings came out of that craft, took me, and then took her. She remembers them taking me and then taking her to be examined. She doesn't know what happened with me, but she knows what happened with her. And then returned us. And when we don't know if our parents were taken or not, because when she was returned, I was back on the lawn, and so were my parents. We were all just looking up, like we're frozen in time. Okay. You can only assume this is the missing time phenomenon. Okay, so when we were all back in place, we were switched back on, so to speak, and the craft had departed. All it was left was that smoke.
The late Professor John Edward Mack, a respected Harvard University psychiatrist, was asked to investigate an experiencer's case and became so perplexed by the phenomenon that he devoted a substantial amount of time to investigating additional cases. His desire was to understand objectively what was going on. Professor Mack eventually concluded that the only phenomenon in psychiatry that adequately explained the patient's symptoms in several of the most compelling cases was post-traumatic stress disorder. This would imply that the patient genuinely believed that the remembered frightening incident had really occurred.
These people have been examined by myself. They've been tested psychologically. They are of above average intelligence. They are of sound mind. They've been shown as of superior mental functioning by the testers. So there is not indication of any kind of psychiatric condition that can account for this that I've been able to find. In fact, when one abductee hears the story of another abductee, they react with shock because they don't want to believe it's true. They would rather believe it's a dream or a form of mental illness than that this is something real because it's so shattering to their notion of reality. And that's happened over and over again among the people I've been working with.
Many abductees have endured encounters their entire lives, including when they were very young.
We're watching as the sky seemed to be giving birth to this huge craft. The lights were there, and it just kind of came through a vortex, and that's why I believe that extraterrestrials come from other planets and or other dimensions through a vortex. They instead of going from point A to point B, they fold time and leave their space-time and arrive at ours instantaneously.
The majority of abductees do not appear to be deluded, confabulating, lying, self-dramatizing, or suffering from a clear mental illness. While psychopathology is indicated in some isolated alien abduction cases, assessment by both clinical examination and standardized tests has shown that, as a group, abduction experiencers are no different from the general population. The abduction phenomenon has been going on for a very long time, perhaps even in antiquity. Cave paintings made by our ancestors are strikingly similar to modern-day descriptions of aliens. History is replete with mystical tales that sound very much like alien abductions or extraterrestrial encounters. Such tales are often found in our holy texts. For example, the Bible contains many stories that could be interpreted as alien encounters.
I woke up and saw a big black hole hanging above my head in the bed. And out of that, metallic cable came out through the portal that was above my head and started kicking off electricity and just whipping around above my head. And as it did that, I felt a high vibration pulsing through me. And it was very heavy. It almost felt like I could just explode. And as it revved up, I started to feel engulfed by what was this black hole in front of me. And then suddenly I found myself on board what appeared to be a craft. I didn't go through the front door, so to speak. I came in, however, this contraption allowed me to transmit over to it, the craft, and I was in a small room with two little gray guys. They led me into what appeared to be an examination room, and there was another little gray in there, and then they left me alone in the room. Now, normally when I'm taken, I'm paralyzed. They keep me under close watch. But I'm like, well, this is strange. They just kind of left me alone here in this room, and, they don't seem to care that I'm here, so I'm gonna see what's in that door there. So I walked off and I exited a door from the room, walked down a hallway, and I looked back and they were following me. It seemed like they very quickly realized I left the room, but just wanted to see what I would do. And as I walked around this sort of curving hallway, I came to a dead end, and so I had to come back. And as I started back towards them, a door on my right opened up, and I could tell that's where they actually wanted me to go. We went into this room. There was a big metal chair in the center of the room, and they had me sit in it. And the little gray guys that were following me around, they were about 3 foot tall, kind of a charred gray, and they ushered me into a room where there was a slightly taller being that looked a lot like them, but had lighter skin. He was about 5 feet tall, and had a very doctorly type of feel to him. And as I sat in the chair, he looked at me and he said, "Okay, be very good, and you'll get to see the color blue." Now, as a kid, you expect, be very good, you get ice cream, a sucker, some kind of treat, something like that. But the color blue, I'm like, these guys don't really understand children very well, do they?
While alien abductions did not achieve widespread attention until the 1960s, there were many similar stories circulating decades earlier. These early abduction-like accounts have been dubbed paleo abductions by UFO researcher Jerome Clark. In an 1897 edition of the Stockton, California Daily Mail, Colonel H.G. Shaw claimed he and a friend were harassed by 3 tall, slender humanoids whose bodies were covered with a fine, downy hair. Colonel Shaw reported that these beings tried to kidnap the pair. Dr. Ronald Sprinkle, a University of Wyoming psychologist, became interested in the abduction phenomenon in the 1960s. For some years, he was probably the only academic figure devoting any time to studying or researching abduction accounts. Sprinkle became convinced of the phenomenon's reality and was perhaps the first to suggest a link between abductions and cattle mutilations. Eventually, Sprinkle came to believe that he had been abducted by aliens in his youth. After that, he was forced from his job in 1989. The mid and late 1980s saw the involvement of 2 esteemed academic figures, Harvard psychiatrist John Mack and historian David M. Jacobs. This decade brought a major degree of mainstream attention to the subject. Works by Bud Hopkins, Whitney Strieber, David M. Jacobs, and John Edward Mack presented alien abduction as a genuine phenomenon. Jacobs and Hopkins argued that alien abduction was far more common than earlier suspected. They estimated that tens of thousands of North Americans had been taken by unexplained beings. Furthermore, Jacobs and Hopkins believed that there was an elaborate scheme underway, that the aliens were attempting to create human-alien hybrids. Dr. David Jacobs, author of The Threat, says, "The entire abduction event is precisely orchestrated. All of the procedures are predetermined. There is no standing around and deciding what to do next. The beings are task-oriented, and there's no indication whatsoever that they've been able to find of any aspect of their lives outside of performing the abduction procedures."
But as I sat there, I was just sort of staring at his giant, big black liquid eyes, and I felt a sharp pain on my right arm. And when I looked down, I saw there was a cut across my arm. And then I saw it heal right before my eyes, right when I was looking at it. I don't know what caused the cut. I didn't actually see a scalpel or a laser or any type of device cutting it. I just saw, felt the pain, and I saw the cut, and then I looked and I saw it heal up into a scar. And I looked back at the being, and suddenly his black eyes turned a bright, backlit blue, very bright blue, like he had these lights almost right from his head. And it was very bizarre, but at the same time, it was beautiful. His eyes were such a wonderful, deep, lustrous, cerulean blue, and it was very tranquilizing. It was very calming. It was peaceful. It was wonderful. And I just lost myself in these eyes. And then I woke up in bed the next day, and I had the scar there, and I still have the scar. In fact, later that same day, the story wasn't over yet. I was playing in the backyard with a friend of mine, 6-year-old from a few doors down, and this mist rolled into the backyard, and there was a little gray guy in it, and he just came to check up on me, make sure I was fine, and it only took a second for him to figure out I was, and then the mist and the little gray guy just continued on through the backyard of the next door neighbors and kept going. My friend didn't even seem aware that there was anything in the mist. We definitely both saw the mist, but only I saw the little guy. And then, that was probably about the end of that one, but I still have the scar.
You may not believe they can hold such power, that you elect your government, but the facts are simple. All of the media which influences your decisions is owned by the same people. The same people own both sides of the political world, whether red or blue. They select their future leaders while still at university. They grow them, manipulate them. They then decide what they need to happen and who needs to be in power at any one time, and manipulate the media to convince us. Ever watched the news and screamed at it because you know that they are not telling you the whole truth? Why are we being so calm about immigration, you may shout? Why are we not invading the Middle East and stopping all the nonsense? Why do we let China get away with massive human rights crimes? The list is endless, but the answer is the same. The news channels are controlled by the elite. We are watching nothing but permanent propaganda. It permeates everything. News, soap operas, films, magazines, music, and the internet. All is controlled. What we do know, though, is that these watchers continued in what has been described as the underground stream, and were called egregores. They bred with humanity and melted away. Very soon, massive secret societies emerged that fostered the original teachings of the Shining Ones. Today, these secret societies, controlled by this hybrid race, are in complete control of the world. Propitious with the descent of the Paraclete sent by Christ. In addition to the assistance rendered by the attachment, on the side of the initiator with the egregor, protector of the secret chain. The goal is simple and straightforward. It is obvious from all the recorded history we have. It is to create a single, one world government that rules without question. The results of just two methods of control are the formation of a one world army under the United Nations, to carry out the will of the secretive elite, and a World Bank to control the finances of the same. Such power is wielded here that nobody dare rise against it. And all along, the same families are behind the entire scheme. The same families that sit on thrones in glorious palaces, and are still worshipped as gods, and are still given authority by the created religions. The Queen of England and the Commonwealth is just one example. Her bloodline can be traced back thousands of years to the very original times of the Watchers and Shining Ones. Her bloodline is special because it is a hybrid bloodline, carefully monitored and interbred with members of the same hybrid descendants to this day. It used to be that we were told what to believe, or we'd be hung and then go to hell. Now they threaten us with financial crises or terrorism that they create, foster and build. From the moment we are born on this planet we call Earth, we are under the yoke of an invisible, superior race. Occasionally mankind has had visions of them and sensed their presence. We have given names to these fleeting transcendental blips in the reality of human consciousness. Angels, demons, ghosts, fairies, elves, aliens, reptilians, men in black, and now dark, all-powerful, secret societies. But these are not necessarily beings from another planet, but from another dimension. There is a science behind their existence, and the secret lies within the waveform. Over the millennia, these beings have stepped in and out of what we call reality, and manipulated our lives. They have control of all our governing institutions, from sovereigns to senate, from commerce to church. They have fed us a series of lies, and we have gorged upon them. It's time to stop the feeding frenzy, and to change our diet to one of truth, to expose the hidden agenda that poisons our minds, to take back our lives. The first thing we have to do is to overcome the immediate sense of how strange and bizarre the whole thing of an ancient, controlling and hidden race of beings can sound. Our ordinary lives are so full of facts and figures that we perceive as reality. Today we have watchers. Thousands of people have witnessed them. Hundreds come into direct contact with them. There are comic books, games, and even movies all about them. We know them as the Men in Black. Their origin in modern times can be found in the 1940s as UFO sightings were on the increase. People who reported having witnessed a UFO started to be contacted and threatened by sinister men in plain clothes and black suits. They have strange superhuman powers. They come and go as they please, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They are referred to by some as demonic beings. They have strange features and dark skin. They shapeshift. Over the thousands of years between the invasion of these watchers or reptilians, they have not taken power of our governments, religions and secret societies. They created them. But they are the fittest of the species, and we are not. We are the prisoners, and they are the guards. Although we cannot see the entities we are describing without altering our vision, they are there, and there are opposing forces at work. We see everything around us because of a very small part of the wave spectrum. We call it light. But there are many kinds of light, and we only see a slither. Outside of that minor part of the spectrum, there are other things we cannot see. Over thousands of years, there have been millions of people that have seen beyond our normal spectrum, and they have witnessed these other beings. One large group who did so were the ancient shaman. These are records left behind by people such as Enoch, and remarkably, the same things spoken of thousands of years ago are still being witnessed today. Benevolent beings saving humans from disaster, battles in the sky, a war between those that would control us and those that would set us free.
theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking in 2010 warned that humans should not try to contact alien life forms. He warned that aliens might pillage Earth for resources. If aliens visit us, the outcome would be much as when Columbus landed in America, which didn't turn out well for the Native Americans. Even the President of the United States alluded to the alien presence in an interview with late-night talk host Jimmy Kimmel. On the show, Obama stated, "The aliens won't let it happen. You'd reveal all their secrets, and they exercise strict control over us." Obama said, "I can't reveal anything." When Kimmel pressed Obama, telling him how President Clinton claimed to have looked into the government files on UFOs and found nothing, Obama replied, "Well, you know, that's what we're instructed to say." Throughout the short minute-and-a-half UFO-related dialogue between Kimmel and Obama, both were smiling and laughing almost the entire time, giving the impression that everything said by the president was strictly humorous. Was this just a joke, or a veiled attempt to release information the president is restricted to talk about? On the same show, President Clinton had also admitted that he believes in alien life. He stated that if he did know about aliens on Earth, he would tell the world, and that if we were visited, that he would not be surprised. He went on to say, "Think about how all the differences among people on Earth would seem small if we felt threatened by a space invader." The idea is that the aliens either can't reproduce or want to create a slave race to do their bidding. The Earth itself is unique for two reasons. It has an abundance of liquid water. Most planets are either frozen or complete deserts. And the Earth contains life. There is a multitude of plant and animal life all over our planet. These two things make us unique and would be very appetizing to another biological life form. Phil Snyder, a former government geologist and engineer with over 17 years of experience in black projects, is one of the most important whistleblowers in modern history. He is a geologist, structural engineer, and metallurgist that's worked on building deep underground military bases. He spent more than 17 years with U.S. government black projects, carrying a level 3 security clearance at secret bases such as Area 51, S4, and Los Alamos. Snyder claimed there are 131 active underground bases in the United States, with approximately 1,477 worldwide. He says magneto-levitron trains connect all the bases within the continental U.S. in a vast subterranean transport system. According to Snyder, the U.S. government signed an agreement in 1954 with extraterrestrials, granting them the right to experiment on humans and cattle in exchange for technology. This agreement was known as the Grenada Treaty, and it is a well-documented event. The original terms for this treaty were that only a small number of humans would be abducted. They had to be returned to their original locations, and their memories had to be wiped. The aliens were supposed to submit a list of the individuals they were taking to Majestic 12, a government overseeing committee. However, after a few years of this, it became clear that the aliens were taking far more humans than they had originally bargained for, which spawned the origins of the alien-human conflict that persists to this day. He describes the alien agenda as the complete takeover of this planet, the killing off of a portion of the world's population by 2029. An alien takeover would mean the implementation of a one-world government, which is the direct opposite of constitutional law, and would be the end of freedom as we know it. Schneider claims some of the alien races here on Earth actually eat people and use the glandular secretions of animals and humans for mixtures of the vitamins for their food and can actually get high from our adrenaline. According to Schneider, there are more than 100,000 missing children totally unaccountable for from FBI archives in the U.S. alone. He believes that many of them are held captive underground and summarily done away with. In some cases, they are literally eaten. Schneider claims that there are 11 distinct races of aliens here on Earth, with only 2 of them being benevolent. He claims to be one of only 3 survivors of an alien-human war at the Dulles, New Mexico and Los Alamos underground bases, where 66 government agents and workers lost their lives in August of 1979. Schneider claims that all information dealing with aliens is kept well hidden from the public, and that the U.S. military has known about the alien presence for more than 85 years, going back as early as 1909. He asserts that more than $500 billion was being allocated annually to black projects dealing with these matters in 1995. According to Schneider, 28% of the U.S. gross national product was being spent exclusively on building underground bases. This black budget sidesteps Congress completely and is a treasonous violation of constitutional law and taxpayer money. Without a doubt, these budgets and projects continue today on a massive scale. Schneider gave a talk in 1995 where he made explosive claims about government cover-ups, black budget projects, UFOs, and government military collaboration with aliens in deep underground bases. Less than 6 months after giving his talk, he was found dead in his apartment with piano wire still wrapped around his neck in what appears to be a military-style execution. According to some sources, he had been brutally tortured repeatedly before being killed. The authorities dismissed the death as a suicide. On the night and early hours of February 20th and 21st of 1954, while on vacation to Palm Springs, California, President Dwight Eisenhower went missing and allegedly was taken to Edwards Air Force Base for a secret meeting. When he showed up the next morning at a church service in Los Angeles, reporters were told that he had to have emergency dental treatment the previous evening. However, sources close to the president claim he was actually taken to Edwards Air Force Base to meet with aliens. According to whistleblowers, the president first met with Nordic-type aliens that he later determined were unable to share technology. Then he met with the Greys and signed the Greada Treaty, allowing the Greys to take a few humans and cattle in exchange for technology.
As I'm actively involved in the local MUFON chapter in Michigan, we get currently about 200 sightings a year just in Michigan. And that is enough to fill your plate several times over with UFO cases. So to me, it's almost at a point where I don't care what the government knows and what they're hiding. I've got an embarrassment of riches here with the number of UFO cases coming into our local chapter. You know, I don't need them to try to hide anything, because it's all, you know, just flowing freely now. People are talking about what's happening to them openly.
Though throughout the history of UFO studies, countless cases have occurred that do indeed present physical evidence, many are not aware of this, or the facts of a case are simply ignored. Details in each case often are the proof an encounter happened. One common assertion by alien abductees is that they are tagged with alien implants when taken. Alien implants is a term used in ufology to describe a physical object placed in someone's body after they have been abducted by aliens. California podiatrist Dr. Roger Lear claims to have removed alien implants from patients. Alien implants is a term used in ufology to describe a physical object placed in someone's body after they have been abducted by aliens. Claimed abilities of the implants range from telepresence, mind control, and biotelemetry, the way we tag wild animals for study. As with UFO subjects in general, the idea of alien implants has seen very little attention from mainstream scientists.
We found in several cases that they put out an electromagnetic field measurable on a Gauss meter of about 6 milligauss. And if anybody's into electronics or radio, you'll know that's a pretty strong magnetic field. When they're taken out of the body, they don't do anything. Also on an instrument called a trimeter, we get a mid-range reading on a combined scale, electrical scale, and magnetic scale. And that's also a pretty strong reading. We have an electrical engineer that we've used, and he has designed a special probe that's connected with an oscilloscope so we can read the waves and see what it looks like. And he says there's a good indication that there's something going in and there's something coming out. So obviously these objects are in communication with somebody at some distance.
I find that the best cases are cases where people are coming forward after 20, 30, and 40 years. Finally coming forward with these cases where they had lived at the time in Michigan and saw this, had a very close encounter, like myself, like my family, with a UFO. Not just a light in the sky, but a close encounter where it's a couple hundred feet away and you can see it's perfectly silent. It has no visible sign of propulsion, has no wings, has no rotors, makes no sound. What is it? You know, and then it hovers, shoots off. What do we have that would cancel out the inertia to where the pilot would not be a grease spot on the wall when it takes off, you see? So yeah, I've heard of a lot of cases with Michigan MUFON. Some of them have good evidence, but personally, all I can say is my sighting. Now, I can't convince you, I can't convince your viewers that my family actually saw this thing. You know? But what would be my motivation? I've written 3 books. Is it to sell books? Trust me, you don't get rich selling books on UFOs. So, but the purpose of the books is to get the word out there, to let people know we're not alone.
There are individuals who are pressing the issue with the government. One such notable researcher is Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer is an American retired medical doctor and ufologist who founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and the Disclosure Project, which seeks the disclosure of suppressed UFO information. He founded the center in 1990 to create a diplomatic and research-based initiative to contact extraterrestrial civilizations. The Disclosure Project was founded in an effort to grant amnesty to government whistleblowers willing to violate their security oath by sharing insider knowledge about UFOs. Greer says he gave a briefing to CIA Director James Woolsey that same year. In May 2001, Greer held a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. that featured 20 retired Air Force, Federal Aviation Administration, and intelligence officers. Greer has gathered 120 hours of testimony from civilians and various government and military officials on the topic of UFOs, including astronaut Gordon Cooper and a brigadier general.
Subconsciously, the human mind is being made familiar with something that if it wasn't made familiar with subconsciously in this way, when it is revealed, people would be in a massive, massive state of shock, whereas they're bringing it in slowly. So what they're doing is that on one level, they are preparing people to be familiar with and therefore be far more likely to accept without resistance the very Orwellian society that's being brought in by these reptilian hybrid bloodlines, because this archontic force has been working to manipulate human society over these, what we call in our version of time, thousands of years, to reach this point where they can take the whole thing over and turn humans into a slave race. Now, this is interesting, given what I've talked about in terms of this archontic reptilian force cannot create itself. It has to piggyback that which is already created. It cannot create the Orwellian society. It has to manipulate us to do it.